Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 25 series, Can We Save the Oakland A's? And we are about to begin the 2025 season. Our expectations for the A's are not necessarily all that high, especially given that, and those of you who watched our last episode know this, but Mason Miller, likely the top player on our team, ruptured his UCL during spring training this year. Was incredibly disappointing because we got an outstanding result with him in the development lab over the winter. And that outstanding result had to do with his stamina. So his stamina improved to a 40. And also, supposedly, his health was better, but wasn't good enough to avoid this injury. We were trying to see if we could turn him into perhaps a front end 5 inning type of starter with that increase in stamina. But unfortunately, that initiative will have to wait at least a year. Oswaldo Cabrera also on the IL as the season begins. We talked a lot over the last few episodes, and there have been a lot of comments in the comment section about potentially trading away Mason Miller. Certainly in retrospect, wish we had maybe traded him for the young shortstop Mason Wynn of the Cardinals organization when we had the opportunity. Looks like Wynn is up with the Cardinals now. We actually are exploring a minor leaguer who's younger than Wynn. Probably not quite as good a bat as we think Mason Wynn could have, but potentially just as good, if not better, defensively, who I think may cost a little bit less. So we're getting an updated scouting report on him. Maybe someone we pursue over the near term. I'll keep you posted on whether that's something we're going to try. Couple of comments and housekeeping items before we get the episode started. Did end up spending a little more on player payroll than I anticipated at the end of the last episode. That's because I actually hadn't added some guys who are going to make our team to the 40-man roster yet. We had so many players in spring training between Rule 5 drafts and minor league free agents that we had signed and players we had traded for that there were, and also players we had given minor league contracts with major league options to who ended up making the major league team. So the payroll a bit higher than we anticipated. That's meant that we've had to cut down scouting, player development, and the draft budget just a little bit. That said, with the draft budget where it is compared to our expectations for our slot amounts, we should definitely be able to go way over slot on a few players and perhaps mix in an impossible to sign player when we do get to the draft this year, which will hopefully help us jumpstart the development of this minor league system, which currently ranks 24th overall. Second housekeeping item is just a thank you up front for those of you who are watching this. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, would sincerely appreciate it if you consider it. We're closing in on 2,000 subscribers and can use all the help that we get. And always appreciate it if you throw a like on the video and or leave a comment down below. The interaction and the advice and the suggestions are all helpful and give me lots of interesting things to think about, even if I don't always necessarily act on them the way that is suggested. And the third and final item before we start moving forward with the season, I got some comments to the last episode from Chuck Thulu, Gene C., and Patrick DeBonis on O'Neill Cruz, who we traded for not long ago. And you may remember that our thought was that we pivot Cruz from the shortstop position he had been playing with Pittsburgh to third base. And even though he was only with us for a few weeks in spring training, you could see he picked up third pretty quickly. And by playing third, he's also kind of showing his potential at first base. Clearly looks like he could be a Gold Glove quality first baseman if we were to play him there with those defensive ratings plus his 6'7" height. I don't know that he's ever really going to hit quite enough for me to feel comfortable playing him at first base, but that certainly is an option for us down the line. Also appreciate what some of you shared with your experiences with Denzel Clark, who was the main player that we included in the trade for O'Neal. Sounds like some of you have had a lot of success with Denzel Clark. I can't say that I'm necessarily rooting for that right now since we've traded him away. It looks like the Pirates organization is starting him off in AAA Indianapolis, but I would not be surprised to see him finally making his major league debut later this season. And with that, it is time to get this 2025 season underway. As we noted at the end of our last episode, the preseason predictions, not necessarily all that kind to Oakland, suggest that we'll go 70-92 and be tied for the worst record in the American League this year. Given the injury to our best player, and the fact that we aren't necessarily playing to be incredibly competitive this year, we'd certainly like to win more games than last year. We'd love to win more games than we lose, but the point at this point, or at least my goal at this point, is to try to build up the minor league system. We've already revamped the coaching staff at the start of this playthrough. Now it's just a matter of attracting some players for us. So hopefully we'll continue to make some progress on improving our system through this season while also not sucking completely, which is all ownership is expecting from us on the field. And I'll keep you posted when we hear back on the young shortstop that we're intrigued in. Once I've got a very high level of confidence in the scouting report on him, we'll decide whether it might be worth giving up likely one of the better prospects in our system, as well as a useful player off the major league roster to pick him up. And we also have a couple of waiver wire claims in for pitchers. We'll likely find out in the next couple of days whether either of them goes through successfully. And we did have both of our waiver claims successful. A couple of familiar names if you followed our Out of the Park Baseball 25 mini-series before we started this deep dive. Ian Hamilton of the Yankees, who we played in our first mini-series, was waived by them, and we've picked him up. And Gabe Spire, who was a pretty important left-handed arm in the bullpen for us for a few years in our Seattle mini-series, also was waived, and we decided to claim him as well. Part of the reason we're doing this is that I mentioned if we do try to piece together the trade that I've been teasing for the first 5 minutes of this episode or so, we're probably going to have to give up a pretty useful pitcher off of our staff, and hopefully if we do that, Spire and or Hamilton will help fill the potential void. And our Oakland A's are off to a shockingly fast start here in 2025. Just swept a 4-game homestand against the Angels, 4 games against the Rangers coming up before a 3-game series at the Angels. But certainly a nice start to the season, and we do have the scouting report back on the player that I've been talking about. It's Cameron Cawley, a shortstop in the, as it happens to be, Rangers organization, who we're going to be playing shortly. And intrigued by his glove, intrigued by his speed. His bat doesn't look like it's going to be anything special, but for a player with that glove and that speed, it's not a bad combination. And he seems like he's a player that the Rangers organization just really doesn't know what to do with. He's been in A ball or high A ball for 3+ years now, and they plan on beginning a 4th consecutive year for him in A or high A this year, despite the fact that it looks like he can probably hold his own against Double-A pitching. So I don't really understand what the Rangers organization is doing with him. As I talked about earlier, I think you could certainly argue his glove is better than Mason Wynn's, although he doesn't have quite the arm. His bat, probably not quite at the same level. I guess instead of just talking about this and making you believe me, I could actually show you the numbers here, and you can see where Mason Wynn with that potential 60 contact, 60 gap power, 50 power, and 50 eye. Certainly a better bat. Pretty similar speed, a little less range and error, but he's got the better arm. Wynn does have some positive personality traits with that high work ethic, but also a few negative personality traits. So I think Wynn is certainly a better player, but Wynn at this point is also somebody that we have no one who will make this deal work with. And even if we were to put in Mason Miller, we'd need to add some pretty significant talent with it. So it seems like we may have priced ourselves out of the Mason Wynn market. But where something goes wrong, there's also a potential opportunity. And I think we may have that with Cameron Cawley here. I have at this point already moved Gabe Spire onto the Major League roster. I still have the other guy that we picked up in waivers, Ian Hamilton. Ian Kennedy, that's a little bit older than Ian Hamilton. Ian Hamilton waiting for us to designate him for assignment. And as I noted earlier, we may have to include a pretty important pitcher on our team to bring Mr. Cawley into the organization. But given that, despite the 4-0 start, I don't really think we're going to be a significant contender this year. Thinking a little more longer term than shorter term may be the right approach. And I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is we're going to be able to get a deal for Cawley done. And the second piece of good news is they're actually, for some reason, looking for a little less than I were when I first looked at this trade just a matter of days ago. It's crazy how that stuff works. So those are very positive things. The negative thing is that they still need us to include Jason Adam in the trade, who we made a trade with Miami for right after Christmas, and we have installed him as our closer this year. He's 3 for 3 in save opportunities for us this season. Exceptional stuff, 3 great pitches, plus movement, plus control. A very good pitcher. Set to make $4.2 million next year. So we probably would have been able to afford bringing him back. We did, if you remember, get Miami to keep 75% of his contract for this upcoming season, which does make him even more attractive in the trade for us. So it stinks to get rid of him. But with the fact that we've just picked up Hamilton and Spire on the waiver wire, I think we can afford to do it. The other player that we have to include is Cooper Bowman, shortstop. Not a big part of our future, 25 years old. Was respectable last year in Double-A, but certainly not someone that I think has a big future with our organization. He certainly has good speed. He's more than competent defensively, and he's not going to be a total disaster at the plate, but best case scenario for him is a utility infielder. Well, I think that Cawley could end up being a starter for us. The other piece of bad news, and it's just a minor piece of bad news, I hadn't actually noticed that Cawley is already on a major league contract and he only has 2 option years left. So that's going to make it even more important for us to move him to Double-A and try to work on hopefully developing and promoting him relatively quickly over these next couple of seasons. So that accelerates our time frame with him a little bit, unfortunately. But if he ends up panning out, I guess we'd rather have him in the majors sooner rather than later. So we are going to go ahead and make this deal. Definitely don't love giving up Adam, but again, do I think we're going to be 162-0 this year? No, I do not. Do I think we're going to be 81-81 this year? I think that's pretty unlikely as well. So a closer, even as good as we think Adam was going to be in his mid-30s, is probably a luxury that we can't afford to have when passing him along lets us bring in a 22-year-old shortstop who has a chance at being our shortstop of the future if everything works out well. And even if it doesn't, with his combination of speed and really good defense, even if the bat is not quite what we hope it could be, I think he could still be a very useful utility player for us going forward. And we've assigned Cawley to Double A, and we're up putting Hamilton right into our closer role. He's going to take over for Adam in every sense of the word. Probably not a great sign for our team that we've added a closer and a key setup man on the waiver wire, but if they can help us this year, that's what we're looking for. And after that fast start and trading away Mr. Adam, the second week of the season did not go nearly as well as the first. We were swept 4 games at home against Texas, and then we lost 2 out of 3 on the road at the Angels. So after that 4-0 start, we're already below 500 at 5-6. Check in quickly on Mr. Hamilton, and he certainly hasn't been almost perfect like Adam was. He's actually experienced a loss for us, and he does have 1 save in 3 games pitched. We did, you'll remember in the O'Neill Cruz trade, pick up $44,000 in IAFA money. We offered all of it to Luis Trigueros. Don't think he's necessarily going to be a big-time pitcher for us, but he is a guy with that high leadership, especially, can hopefully be a good influence down at our DSL club and maybe in the lower minors at some point if he ever ends up getting promoted out of rookie ball down the line. And those of you who are eagle-eyed may also have noticed that with the additions of Hamilton and Spire and their contracts, had to cut down our development and draft budgets a little bit. And we've made it through the first month of the season, and unfortunately and not surprisingly, the A's are one of the worst teams in the American League with 9 wins. We only are ahead of the Toronto Blue Jays in the AL wildcard standings, and we're already 4 games out here just a month into the season. A few pieces of slightly positive news. Estuary Ruiz looks like he could conceivably lead the league in steals for a second consecutive year. Bad news is he's hitting barely above the Mendoza line. And new addition Anthony Santander is 3rd in the American League in ribbies. So nice to see some production from him. 118 WRC plus. The on-base percentage below 300 is certainly not what we envisioned, but with 8 home runs and 25 ribbies in his first 101 at-bats in an Oakland uniform, he still has been pretty productive for us thus far. Take a look at how the team is doing overall, and unlike last year, we're actually slightly underperforming our Pythagorean expectations, so we'll take that as a slight positive. And we're not last in every major offensive category like we were a year ago. We're tied for 13th in runs scored, and we are 12th in the American League in runs allowed at this point. Certainly don't think that missing out on Mason Miller and trading away Jason Adam has helped us in terms of the number of runs this team is allowing. And the month of May not going well so far. Still 2-8 over our last 10, as we were, I believe, the last time we checked in at the end of the month of April. 11-23 record is worst in the American League at this point, and the only team we are better than in all of baseball are the putrid Colorado Rockies. A little bit of dissension starting to show in the clubhouse. Domingo Germán, who we picked up this past offseason as a minor league free agent signing, is complaining that he's not a part of the starting rotation. Domingo, if you didn't have a 5.68 ERA and 10 walks in 12 2/3 innings pitched, I might take your complaints a bit more seriously. And the A's are playing a bit better of late. We somehow just swept a 3-game series in the Bronx against the Yankees, allowing only 4 runs, and we've won 4 of our last 5 at this point. So rough start to the season for the A's. Would certainly love to get that winning percentage over 400. And in a perfect world, would love to be out of the basement and at least flirting with thoughts of a wild card spot come the beginning of September. And we've made it now to the beginning of June. May was certainly a streaky month for our Oakland A's, but playing better of late with 4 wins in our last 5 games. As we sit here on June 1st, we're 21-31, have gotten that winning percentage over 400, and we are better than the Royals and the Red Sox at this point in the American League, so we're no longer the worst team in the AL. Small victories, but we'll take them. 6.5 back for the wild card spot, though, so we've still, not surprisingly, lost a little bit of ground in our hope to be in the wild card race come September. Looking at the team statistics, we are back to the familiar position from a year ago, ranking last in the American League in runs scored. The pitching, though, definitely improved in the month of May. We're 6th in the American League in runs allowed, 12-15 record for the month of May, and we're still 1 game worse than Pythagorean expectations this year. So certainly not going great, but it hasn't been a complete disaster either. And with 2 months of the season gone, we'll check in quickly on our team and see how everyone's doing. Our number 1 and 2 starters, Clark Schmidt and J.P. Sears, have both been fine, but numbers 3, 4, and 5, Boyd, Spence, and Muller, have not been good. We're probably going to make a couple of changes as we try to mix and match things. We're going to keep Spence in the rotation because he's got our captain personality. We don't want this locker room to splinter while the team isn't playing all that well. But I think we are going to swap out the lefties Boyd and Muller. Domingo Germán has been pitching better of late, and that'll add another right-hander into our rotation. And we're also going to give Colby Allard, who was a free agent signing of ours this offseason, has done a nice job for us working out of the bullpen, an opportunity to take over as well. So Boyd and Muller will move into the bullpen, Germán and Allard into the rotation. Taylor Rogers looks like he may be all done. We mentioned a few episodes ago, or maybe it was only last episode, that he's lost a lot of velocity. Still seems like he should be pretty effective against left-handed batters, but working as a specialist against left-handed hitters this year. He has not been particularly effective with a 6.57 earned run average. Nick Frasso, the Rule 5 acquisition, not doing great. The good news is that Ian Hamilton and Gabe Spire, the 2 guys that we did pick up in waivers, or more accurately on waivers and then off of waivers a couple of months ago, are both performing reasonably well in our bullpen for us. And we'll take a quick look at our offensive players as well. We were hoping that Will Banfield, the catcher who we picked up in a trade last offseason, might be able to press Shea Langeliers to be our starter. But with the 127 average that Banfield has put up, he is, I don't even want to say borderline unplayable, a minus 31 WRC plus and a minus 0.4 WAR in just 15 games played are pretty brutal. His ratings suggest he should be better than that. We're still intrigued by his bat, or by his glove, but certainly has not done what we would have hoped. So Langeliers hitting just 205, but at least is not a complete embarrassment at the plate. Ryan Noda, not quite as productive offensively as he has been the last couple of years. Austin Gauthier, who we picked up in a trade with the Dodgers, really liked his ability to draw walks, and he's not only drawing a lot of walks with 19 bases on balls compared to just 101 at-bats, but he's also batting over 307 at this point. We're only playing him against lefties, so we're trying to be strategic about how we're using him. But he has done well, maybe due for more playing time, because Daryl Hernandez, the youngster who had hit over 300 each of the last couple of years between AA and AAA, is not even batting 200, making his major league debut as a second baseman for us. O'Neal Cruz has been close to league average, so that's something, I guess, for this team. And then Dylan Moore, who we picked up as a rental to platoon with O'Neal Cruz as our third baseman against left-handed pitching only, is performing very well with a 133 WRC plus in pretty limited playing time. Nick Ahmed, picked him up off the waiver wire as a minor league free agent to be our defensive-oriented shortstop. And although he's well below average offensively, he is above replacement level, thanks likely to his respectable defense at short. Michael Conforto has put up just a 91 WRC plus, only 3 homers and 11 ribbies in 132 at-bats. He also had a stint on the IL for us, unfortunately, with hammy, which cost him a few weeks. Jordan Luplow, this one has been a disappointment. His roster spot could be in jeopardy. Was supposed to be a effective hitter for us against left-handed pitching with a little bit of pop in his bat, and starting only against lefties, he's hitting a .194 with only 1 homer in 62 at-bats, 51 WRC plus. So maybe time to consider moving on from him. Anthony Santander, the free agent signing, has a 128 WRC plus, 16 homers and 45 ribbies, are both easily the best figures on the team. His 16 homers and his 45 ribbies are actually both more than double what the second place player on our team has. So a little frightening to imagine what this offense might look like if we didn't have Santander in the lineup. Estuary Ruiz still successful on the base paths for us. WAR of almost 1 at this point. The batting average is .251. And he's 19 of 21 stealing bases. And then Austin Meadows, only a 92 OPS plus. Probably hoped for a little more production from him. Only 3 homers and 16 ribbies in 162 plate appearances, 142 at-bats. Meadows and Conforto, we were both counting on those two, given that they're playing primarily against right-handed pitching. We were expecting that they'd certainly be above average offensive players for us, and thus far they have not. And we traded away Luplow, mentioned that he hasn't hit for much power. Maybe, I'm sure the dimensions of Oakland don't work particularly well for him, but if he's not hitting, he doesn't bring a lot of value to the team. We signed him to a minor league deal with a major league option, but the salary was guaranteed since we had promoted him. So just kind of wanted to try to save some money and get him off the books. So we traded for Milt Bishop, who is actually signed to a minor league contract with major league options by the Seattle organization, but we are not planning on promoting him to the majors. To fill the spot in the lineup for Luplow, we are going to promote Lourdes Gurriel Jr., who we signed as a minor league free agent back in March. He is hitting .358 in AAA. Certainly not expecting that type of production from him, but quite honestly, all he needs to do is hit above 200 with a homer every 50 at-bats, and he'll be more productive for us than Luplow was. And Gurriel Jr. against left-handed pitching certainly looks like someone who is capable of giving us more offense than we've been used to thus far. And perhaps we should have been more receptive when Domingo Germán was complaining about not being a part of the rotation a month or so ago, when even though he wasn't pitching very well out of the bullpen, because he just went 6 innings, 7 hits, no walks, no earned runs, and 7 strikeouts in his first outing out of the rotation for us, named the player of the game as we beat the Cardinals 9-2 here to get the month of June off to a good start. And we've made it to the middle of June, still kind of playing 400 ball at 27-38. We have moved past the Astros, so we are out of the basement in the American League West, but we are still 20 games behind the mighty Rangers, who have easily the best record in baseball this year at 48-19. That puts them 6.5 better than the Dodgers this year. So the Rangers having a great season. Taking a look at that unlikely wild card race for us, we're 7.5 out at this point. We're the third worst team in the American League in terms of our record, tied for third worst with the Red Sox, but better only than the Blue Jays and the Astros, and only barely better than both of those teams. Another injury for us to deal with now, Austin Meadows, the outfielder who playing a little better of late, I guess, to get his WRC plus up to 94. Going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks with an oblique strain. So that'll certainly leave a little bit of a hole in our lineup. But the positive news is that we'll likely be getting a look at one of the better prospects in our system while Meadows is on the IL. And I said we'd likely be able to get a look at one of the top prospects in our system because we've got two potentially interesting left-handed hitters in Oakland. The ones I'm talking are in Las Vegas. Tyler Soderstrom is going to stay down there. We've been playing him at first base. We're now going to give him an opportunity to hopefully learn how to play left field a bit. He's having a big-time year with a 169 WRC plus 316 average. Not too much else for him to work on with the bat. The issue is just where exactly we're going to play him. And now that he's pretty much ready to play first base, we're going to give him the next month or so to see if he can learn a competent-ish left field. But because we're going to keep him down, we're going to promote Lawrence Butler, who has put up a 119 WRC plus this year. Not necessarily the same type of power potential as Tyler has, but probably a more well-balanced bat. He's a better defensive player, and he's also got a little bit of speed. And as we talked about, he's been pretty solid for us in AAA this year. And with Meadows out, Butler's left-handed bat will get an opportunity to play every day in the major leagues over the next month or so. And as we sit here in mid-June, we basically added anyone on the major league roster who's 30 or older, or almost anyone who's 30 or older and on the major league roster to the trade block. Not necessarily expecting we're going to get any offers that excite me for those players, but if there's somebody who can help a contender, we're probably going to be willing to let him go. The type of players I'm talking about are Dylan Moore, Nick Ahmed, pitching-wise, guys like Taylor Rogers, Michael Tonkin, and Matthew Boyd. Again, not necessarily expecting that any of those players are going to have incredible demand for them, but in the case that someone will give us a prospect for someone who's unlikely to be back with us next year and almost certainly will not be a member of our team when we're finally a true contender, we'd be happy to think about bringing some youngsters on board. And as we sit here with about a week left in the month of June, 30-42, still just barely ahead of the Astros and the Red Sox in the standings. Ruiz tied for the league lead in stolen bases, but he's going to be going to the IL, suffering from a mild hamstring strain, moderate impact on his running, and a knee contusion, also a moderate impact on his running. Given that his value is largely driven by his running, where he's 22 of 24 stealing bases, we're going to be cautious with him, especially since we do now have in the majors Mr. Butler, who is capable of hopefully giving us a competent center field for hopefully only the next 10 days while Ruiz is out. And with Meadows and Ruiz both out, we have promoted Tyler Soderstrom, so he makes his return to the major leagues just a couple weeks after we were talking about it. Still has a 159 WRC plus, 22 homers and 52 ribbies and just 194 at-bats in Las Vegas this year. He will primarily be a DH for us at the major league level, but the way his bat has developed, particularly with the power, he may be up for good at this point. We'll find out in the coming weeks. And as we sit here on Wednesday, June 25th, I must unfortunately confess that I have lied to you again. I mentioned when we traded away Luplo about a month ago that there was no way that Lourdes Gurriel Jr. could do worse than Luplo's 52 WRC plus. But unfortunately, Gurriel Jr. has put up a 36 WRC plus for us, and he is still complaining about his role on the team. So I think that his tenure with us could be very short at this point. I do like his high work ethic. He should be a positive influence in the clubhouse, but apparently hitting .231, never walking, and not having any power makes him think he should have a more significant role with our Oakland A's. And we've made it to July 1st, so another month in the books here in this 2025 season. Unfortunately, we've slipped back to last place in the division, but that's largely driven by the fact that the Astros have won 9 in a row. We're actually still better than both the Red Sox and the Royals, and when we take a look at our team statistics closing in on the midway point of the season, at 33 and 46, we're 3 games below Pythagorean expectations, and we've had a second consecutive perfectly mediocre-ish month at 12 and 15. So we have made progress from that awful start to the season in April. Tied for last in the American League in runs scored, but the pitching staff has been excellent, 3rd in the AL in runs allowed, and putting both Domingo Germán and Colby Allard into the rotation seems to have paid some dividends. Spence is also pitching better of late, so the starting rotation is better. The back end of our bullpen in the final innings is doing pretty well, but some of our middle and long relievers and specialists continue to put up less than impressive statistics here in 2025. And we'll sim about another 10 days till we get up to the draft. We will be picking 10th, and as I mentioned, we've set aside a ton of money. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like there are too many high-quality players or too many impossible-to-sign players this year, so it may be a season when, unfortunately, having a lot of the money in the draft doesn't help us. You can see as far as the pitchers, not very top-heavy. We'll probably get an option at a few of these guys with pick number 10. But the position players as well, not a particularly top-heavy draft. So we're probably going to be lucky to come out of this with 2 guys that we feel pretty good about. Should hopefully have an interesting decision to make with the number 10 overall pick. And then it'll just be a matter of maybe some luck with our second round pick. It is conceivable that there's some relatively mediocre potential guys like Jace LaViolette and Brady Ebel who are looking for some significant money. So maybe someone like that will fall to us in the second round. Certainly not going to count on it, but we'll see what happens. One other piece of organizational news. We've promoted Cameron Cawley, the young infielder, to AAA. You can see by the green bars, they say that he's ready for the majors, but those green arrows aren't always accurate. But clearly he was getting one in Double A. If he's still getting one in Triple A, he honestly hasn't performed that well with the bat in Double A, hitting just a buck 87. But it's really affected his morale to not be playing in the majors. So we're hoping that maybe the promotion to AAA will give him a little more positive attitude. He had not, I mean, it looks like he should have performed better than he did in Double A. When we look at his ratings, it feels like he's just gotten unlucky there, and looks like he can probably hold his own against AAA pitching. We have gotten him fully developed as a second baseman, and we're working on him as a third baseman now. As we talked about earlier, we hope the bat is good enough that he can be an everyday player for us somewhere in the major leagues. But if not, certainly think between his speed and his high-quality, versatile glove, at the very least, he should be a very strong utility infielder for us. But we're still hoping that ultimately he develops a little bit more. We did get some positive news in our last report as far as his eye development, which was good to see in our player development update here, where his potential eye rating and his eye rating both improved, as well as his defensive abilities. So he's moving in the right direction, it seems, as far as his ratings, even though we're not necessarily seeing very much in terms of his offensive performance this season. And we made it to our mid-season review with Mr. Fisher. He's not really pleased. He just wanted us not to suck, and we're playing 426 baseball. I'd say that that's not sucking, but he's not liking where we're headed there. Not happy with our on-base percentage. Not happy with Duncan Marston as our best prospect, although he has done a pretty solid job, our 4th overall pick in rookie ball. We're going to let him play out the last week or so of the rookie ball season, and then likely promote the 20-year-old up to A-ball for the rest of the year to give him a little more time to hopefully develop. But ownership not pleased with him, not pleased with building up our farm system, not pleased with our increase in fan interest, although I will say we started off at a 15 and we made it to a 38 over just a season and a half, so I think that's decent. And he thinks that we've actively alienated our foreign fans with the disrespect we've shown at trying to bring in international players. So he's not that pleased with the progress we're making. Honestly, I feel like with guys like Rodas and Salinas, as well as Campos in AAA, Salinas was a scouting discovery. Again, a good illustration of why I like to invest a little more heavily than some in scouting, and a little more heavily in the allocation to international scouting. Juan Campos, also a more recent scouting discovery, who looks like he has some pretty significant potential. And then Rodas, of course, the main primary international free agent signing that we did this past offseason. That seems like a pretty solid crew to me for only one international amateur free agent period. And again, the big investment in scouting, as well as a decent allocation to international scouting and a good scouted international scouting is helping us. I think I'm going to, might as well just talk about this while I'm here. I will ultimately be putting a little less into major and minor league scouting and a bit more into amateur and international scouting, but just at the beginning of the game, trying to get everyone scouted across major and minor league baseball. Tend to devote a little bit more to those my first season or two, and then I drop them down a bit once I kind of have a really good coverage of the players who are already professionals in the United States. And Ruiz is ready to come back, so those leg injuries he's finally recovered from. We're going to send Soderstrom down. He hasn't been great, hitting just 240 at-bats. Most importantly, only one extra base hit, no home runs, 22 WRC plus. As we talked about, we're still trying to make him a little more versatile defensively, even though he's pretty rough just about everywhere except first base. And we'll give him some more regular playing time down in AAA since he hasn't put a stranglehold on that major league spot for himself quite yet. And the good news is that Austin Meadows is back off the injured list. So other than Miller, we're back healthy with the guys that we like. Kind of negative news is that we ended up sending Butler back down, and he really did not deserve to be sent down with a 129 WRC plus over 20 games with us. Still has a little more development, we think, as far as his power and his eye, and want to ensure that he's getting everyday playing time down in AAA. Thought about moving on from Gurriel Jr., but he's actually hit a bit better of late to get his average up to 255 and his WRC plus up to 58. And then Ryan Noda, we thought about moving on from him as well, but he's also been playing better of late, and he continues to really have a good ability to draw walks, has a 109 WRC plus. So although Butler will certainly be taking one of those players that we just talked about spot in the lineup next year, not quite ready to turn the position over to him, so we sent him down. I just noticed this as well. I was checking in on Cameron Cawley to see how he was doing developing at third base, where he hasn't made much progress. He is performing a little better his first week down in Las Vegas, but I noted that he's kind of out of nowhere become the number 81 prospect in baseball. And we talked just a moment ago about the fact that his eye improved and his defense improved. I don't know if this was the case a few days ago when we checked in on him. If it was, I missed it. But from a guy who I don't think was even on the top 200 list to have him developing into hopefully someone who can help us in the not-so-distant future at the major league level, even though losing Adam definitely hurt our chances of winning this year at 38 and 48. I don't know how realistic those chances ever were. And we finally made it to the first year player draft. As you know, we've got pick number 10. You can take a look here at the alleged top 10 prospects, at least one of whom will certainly have the opportunity to pick. We're not going to mess around. We're going to sim through those first 10 picks and see who is still available for us at pick number 10. So we'll get the draft underway. Pick until our Oakland pick, and let's see who's on the board, and then we'll finish up the episode. So if you have thoughts on which direction you would go with this pick, it'll be very helpful for me to hear them. We'll take a look just for purposes of this at the 3 higher rated position players. I'll do more offline, and I'm sure some of you who play frequently probably have some opinions on some of these other guys as well. Noah Franco, a right fielder, left-handed hitter, potential two-way player. Some good personality traits with the high leadership and intelligence, offset a bit by the low loyalty and adaptability. Looks like a true corner outfielder. Looks like a borderline useful major league pitcher. Wouldn't put too much stock in this profile developing, but left-handed hitter who we think could have above average contact, above average power, who's competent as a corner outfielder, probably has some value. He's not looking for a lot of money. This is the year where we don't mind paying a ton to somebody, and of course we're probably not going to be able to find that kind of guy. Dean Moss, another corner outfielder, a little more power, a little less top end as far as his contact, looking for more money. Another left-handed hitter, competent defensively. Looks like he could also potentially play first base, certainly, and third in a pinch. So a couple of decent hitting prospects with Franco and Moss, and then Gavin Turley, a center fielder, Don't love the low leadership and work ethic, but another guy with pretty good home run power, a lot of speed, and a really nice defensive outfielder. So there's actually three interesting-ish prospects among the hitters. Turning to the top pitchers are available, and there's five that we'll talk about here going from the bottom up. Brody Walls, 18-year-old, committed to UT, as in Texas, not Tennessee. Looks like he could have a really nice three-pitch arsenal, plus stuff, average movement, above average control. Another guy who's not looking for a ton of money. Matt Scott, a 21-year-old out of Stanford. Love the personality, high leadership, work ethic, and intelligence. Really good stamina. His fastball and his curve are major league quality. Changeup not far off that. Looks like he could have plus stuff and above average movement and control. So he's a pretty interesting prospect. Certainly looks like someone, if he fully developed and given his personality traits and the good coaching we have, we would hope that he would. He could certainly be the best pitcher on our staff probably within 2 years. Jack McKernan, a starting pitching prospect out of Missouri City, Texas. Another committed to UT. Some good personality traits there. 18-year-old. Going to be reliant on that change developing to become a three-pitch guy. If it does, potentially above average stuff, movement and control. Still think, first glance admittedly, that I probably prefer Scott or Walls over McKernan. The two highest regarded prospects, Marcos Paz, 18-year-old, like the work ethic, don't love the lack of intelligence, but certainly looks like he could have 4 major league quality pitches if that curve and change develop, and they're not too far off major league quality now. So really good stuff, above average movement and slightly above average control if he fully develops. And last, but hopefully not least, Cruz Schoolcraft, who our scout says is a 5-star potential prospect, a potential two-way player whose power looks like it could be off the charts, which is interesting. A little greedy, but he's a great young baseball prospect. Potential 4-pitch arsenal with him. More work to do on the change in the splitter. His stuff could be incredible with really good movement. The control, a little bit of the potential issue. And then looking at his batting ratings here, or his potential batting ratings, definitely looks like a pure DH or a first baseman with that 6'8" height. Average contact, average gap power, potentially decent eye, and then potentially incredible home run power. So he is certainly an interesting prospect. I think we're going to have some interesting choices to think about here in the number 10 pick of the draft here in 2025. So I'm going to give our worldwide scouting department an opportunity to, if you are willing and able to graciously share your thoughts on which direction we should go with me, would certainly appreciate that in the comment section down below or to the side of what you're watching right now. And at the top of our next episode, we'll make those decisions, talk through what some of you hopefully recommended to me, and then move on and see if we can keep this team on the periphery of contention as we sit here on July 11th, still in last place in the American League West, ahead of Boston and the Royals to avoid the worst record in the American League. Taking a look at our team statistics, playing our best baseball of the season thus far in July with a 5-3 record, still last in the American League in runs scored, but third in the American League in runs allowed. Our defense is better than it was a year ago, so good to see some improvements there. But the offense is still a bit of an issue, and we'll work on perhaps trying to address that through the trade market after we get through the draft in our next episode. Until then, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.